Hello and welcome to Introduction to Journalism, a class. Last time we were discussing about the agenda setting theory of mass communication. Today we are going to talk about what is called Aristotle Model of mass communication. This model was developed many years ago. Aristotle is a Greek philosopher and was also a writer. Was born in northern Greece in the year 384 to 322 BC. He proposed this model of communication 300 before BC, means before Christ. So he came up with this philosophy of modes of mass communication that was aimed at disseminating information to targeted audiences. And according to Aristotle model of communication, he came up with the element that must always be considered when you're coming up with the communication process. And Aristotle model is seen as the first model of communication to be developed in the early days when communication was still oral. Because during his era, already during this particular mode of communication, he was coming up with an oral form of communication that you're supposed to consider when you want to come up with the effective mode of communication. So Aristotle came up with these elements of communication. The first one is what we call the speaker. The speaker is someone who develops a message. And if you are coming up to develop this particular message, according to Aristotle, the message must be having specific targeted audiences, and the audience must be able to understand or contextualize what you are trying to communicate or talk about. So Aristotle said that there must be a speaker as the first person in communication. If there is no speaker, it means there is no communication. The speaker is the one who decides the message of communication is what is supposed to be communicated to the targeted audiences. So the speaker has to come up with the most appropriate speech. Why are you using God speech? Because at this particular time of communication, communication was only oral. We didn't have plain form of communication during 300 BC. So he came up with this model, which was based on oral form of communication, or else oral mode of communication by use of appropriate gestures, or else use of appropriate facial expression to make the information to be effective to targeted audiences. Then he also say that another element, the occasion of the event. He said that when you're coming up with a form of communication, you must be knowing the occasion. And your communication must be based on the nature of the program you want to communicate or the topic you're discussing about. You must come up with the effective mode of communication depending on the occasion or the event that you are addressing. And this mode of communication majorly applied to politicians who who are using oral as a form of communication to influence their voters to be able to vote for them. So you must be able to understand the occasion and design a message depending on the occasion of communication or that particular topic of discussion that you want to disseminate to your targeted audiences. Then he said that you must also understand what is called the audience. The nature of your audience, because you have different types of audiences that you must always put into consideration when you want to communicate effectively. And if we have type of audience, those who like you, they like what you are saying and they can be able to comprehend what you are saying. So these are type of audiences who are going to support your idea or else your ideology of communication. We have the audience who don't like you, despite the fact that you are trying to communicate effective message or else a positive message, they just don't like you or else they just hate you, and whatever you say can never make any sense to them. So you need to understand the nature of your audience according to Aristotle when he developed this particular model of communication. And after understanding your kind of audience that you are going to address, you must also know the effect of your communication process. And they say that though you are going to package your message, though you are going to disseminate your message, is going to affect the understanding capability of that particular message. So you need to come up with appropriate message of communication, identify your targeted audiences, and disseminate your information to the extent that is going to have a positive impact into your targeted audiences. And according to Aristotle model of communication, in most cases they are using propaganda in order to be able to affect the understanding capability of their targeted audiences, whereby maybe someone is having a certain ideology, he wants to propagate his ideology to the targeted audiences by using of appropriate form of propaganda and by influencing the understanding capability of the targeted audiences. So Aristotle used these elements of communication. But when you look at these particular elements of communication, you're not having a feedback, which means communication was one way, according to Aristotle model of communication, whereby someone can come and address you, but doesn't give you he doesn't give you an opportunity to reply or else to give your own opinion or your own side of the story. So that's the main disadvantage of Aristotle model of communication, which was developed many years ago during 300 BC. Thank you for your time. I hope you are able to understand Aristotle model of communication and you are able to apply it in the real life situation. Let's meet next time at the same place.